Welcome to the plenary session for Teach for the Bay, Meeting the Moment, Sustaining the Long Haul. And we have a great panel for you this morning. I will be trying to moderate, and panelists, I will give you a time check. We have about 10 to 12 minutes per panelist, and then we'll ideally be taking comments and reactions and questions from the chat, and hopefully we will have some time after, but if not, hopefully we can answer things via chat. So welcome, and let's start our plenary session. First of all, I want to thank the steering committee for Teach for the Bay, and Tracy Burt is on this Zoom with us, and thank you to Tracy, who is the Teach for the Bay coordinator, who by Thursday is starting to look tired, and by tomorrow will still be tired, but Saturday will be all rejuvenated because it's really been quite a success. Yesterday was a very successful day. All of our workshops had people and conversations, and some of them were, extremely well attended. Others were well attended. So we're really happy. This is our steering committee, and we have lots of representatives from colleges, community colleges all over our San Francisco Bay region. The Bay region is supporting this effort. And we also have 3 county offices of education supporting for the K-12 space. So great work from both the staff at City College of San Francisco, faculty, and from our amazing coordinator. Also, shout out to Leah Martinez from Rio Hondo Community College, who did our design of our catalog, and Andrea Medina from DVC, who promoted the event on social media. So great team. And thank you again to our panelists for being here.
So I'm just going to hop in and also give a shout out to Kathy, who's really kind of birthed the idea for this conference. And so we're really so excited to be able to take it to the next level this year. And she has some more. So tomorrow we have a wonderful plenary session with Dr. Jacqueline Ollison, who's going to talk about compassion fatigue and how to make sure teaching remains your dream. So she does incredible work. And then on Saturday, we'll have Voices from the Field, which is a panel of current educators. And that always a very inspiring panel. That's from 11 to 12:30. This afternoon, you have the Interested in Transfer, Consider a Private College workshop. We also have an apprenticeship workshop on Saturday from 10 to 11. You can meet apprenticeship coordinators from around the Bay. And if you don't know what an apprenticeship is, basically it's earn and learn. You work in your job and then you learn in classes, and they're often cohorted, and there's community supports, and it's free tuition and fees. So it's a really great way to support yourself on your way to becoming a teacher. So thanks again, Kathy.
Sure. Thank you, Tracy. And Tracy actually leads our apprenticeship program at City College of San Francisco and works with KO, which is why he's clapping. And he can tell you more about what he does and what keeps him going. But we also have 26 early childhood or education pathways in the San Francisco Bay region. So shout out to BACCC for funding apprenticeship, and to all of our colleges venturing into this new space. I think we're we are a Vision 2030 lead. Dawn's going to tell you more about what that means. But it has to do with the bravery and folks at the community colleges in San Francisco. So we think we're pretty good here. Shout out to San Francisco Bay region. Okay, so quick introduction. We're starting off with Don Daves-Rougeaux, who's with the California Community College Chancellor's office in Sacramento. He actually lives in our region, but he works on behalf of the Chancellor, and he can tell you more about what he does. Rebecca Cheung is with UC Berkeley on recruiting teachers and in education, and she will tell you more about what she does. Then we have Dixie Carranza from San Francisco Unified, who works with training teachers and supporting them. And then K.O. Wilson with Kingmakers, who's committed to diversifying the teacher workforce. And Kingmakers is out of Oakland. So we're going to start off with Don Daves, and I will do the slides. And Don, just tell me when you'd like me to go next with your slide, and then I will give you a 1-minute warning.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Thank
Kathleen.
you.
And thank you to the steering committee for putting this on and inviting me to participate in this. It's a great honor indeed. A quick overview of my background. I actually started out as a high school teacher. Well, I started out as a high school cross country and track coach, and then decided how can I make a living out of that. So that led me to becoming a teacher. Started out at Fresno High School, where I had my first teaching assignment. It was a summer school basic skills assessment, two hour and 45-minute classes. Was super excited to have that great opportunity. Spent some time in court and community schools. I did a 6-month stretch at juvenile hall as a teacher, and it's a long-term substitute opportunity there. And so I eventually ended up, interestingly enough, on the other end of the spectrum. So from a large public school to a small independent boarding school, where I taught for 8 years in northern Santa Barbara County, and then served as a trustee on that boarding school for another 9 years. And what was really interesting about that, I remember when I first started at that school, I was in touch with a good friend of mine who was teaching on the west side of Fresno. And we were talking about the challenges about motivating students and how difficult it was. And oftentimes people will assume that students who are independent or private schools, very privileged, many of them are, but a lot of them actually come from low-income backgrounds, urban communities, and seeking an opportunity to further their education in those environments. And what was interesting about our conversation is how difficult it was at times to motivate students, regardless of sometimes of their economic status. And so I spent about 12 years in the K-12 environment, teaching and coaching. Eventually I matriculated up into higher education. So I went to LA Valley Community College. I went to CSU Fresno, UCSB for graduate work. So I've been across all the systems, and education has always been near and dear to my heart. My grandparents were both educators in East Texas. So I got to really see how difficult it was in terms of the economic stratification for those communities. The students who had the kind of support, family support, community support versus those who didn't, and what a big difference that made in their overall success. I'll never forget when I was doing my student teaching in Fresno, where I had middle schoolers who had never been on the campus at Fresno State. And we've all heard these stories, right? Kids who live just down the street from colleges and universities and have never made it on campus. When I was at Fresno State, we supported the Chicano Youth Conference and Black Student Education Conference to bring African American and Chicano students onto campus at Fresno State. But also recognizing that our students had lots of challenges. I had one young girl who was, one of the brightest students, but had a lot of absences, strings of days where she never showed up to class. And, that compassion fatigue that someone mentioned earlier, right? That really struck me, because I remember showing up at that student's house and checking in on her and trying to figure out what was going on. And there were just a lot of multi-generational challenges. There were no adults in the home. And she was taking care of her younger siblings as a middle schooler. And so just really understanding how important and valuable educators are. For me, it was teachers and coaches who kept me on track, who helped me stay on path, even when I was struggling with my own academic performance and goals. But it was also some faculty who deterred me from my initial goals, which was to study computer science, because of a simple comment like, well, your math isn't strong enough, you should have learned that in high school, right? So we get into these struggles with academic professionals who do these microaggressions, blatant discriminatory commentary towards our students, and how important it is for folks like all of us who are on this call to recognize how valuable we are in that work. And so, and then also the need to go out into spaces that may not be the spaces where we think we should be. So I'll never forget Dr. Basta Martinez, was a faculty member at Fresno State, in the education department really wanted me to go into Clovis, which is at that time was a predominantly white, super conservative community. And I said, no, I'm good. I think I'm going to stay in Fresno proper. And she said, I'm like, why would I want to go to, the Clovis? And she said, well, there are students in those classrooms who need to see you in front of those classrooms. There are Latino and African-American students and Indigenous students, but there are also white students who need to see you in that role in those classrooms, right? So it's really important for us to make sure that we, provide the kinds of resource and the role modeling across all of these spectrums to ensure that we can provide every student with the opportunity to see educators of color as role models as well, to really change some of that dynamic that our students are confronted with in their home community. So that was my inspiration to teach, really. Like I said here in my slides, so coaches, they instill discipline and teamwork. That shaped my approach to education, really wanting to bring people together in a collaborative way to exchange ideas, to build on best practices, and really think about how we can move the needle, both at the school level and the district level, even at the state level, serving as a role model, and then getting that encouragement from those teachers. And then, of course, all we're trying to do here is to ensure student success, right? How are we creating that equitable environment for all students to thrive? It's just a phenomenal space that we're living in right now, where we're talking about equity in a meaningful way, tangible way, where we're actually fighting for and providing the kinds of resources, the individualized resources that are necessary for our students to thrive and to succeed. When I taught at the Dunn School, I started there in 1994, and that school has a whole program for students who have learning differences, dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADD, ADHD, and I was the only credentialed teacher there. It was a private school, so you didn't require credential, typically a master's degree, but folks didn't have teaching experience necessarily. So they actually put us through some training in order to be able to differentiate our teaching for those students who were in that learning skills program. And now we're seeing this across the board in all of our public schools, and valuing the differentiation of student learning, and even how teachers teach, recognizing there are different ways that teachers are going to teach and be able to be effective and impact our students. And so I think that's an important part of that kind of diversity of our educational system as well. So Kathleen, go ahead, next slide. And so this is so as I mentioned, my name is Daves-Rougeaux. I'm the senior advisor to Chancellor Christian at the statewide community college chancellor's office. And part of my role is supporting Vice Chancellor Tony Cordova and Dean LaCandice Ochoa, who's here on the call, to support our workforce and economic development efforts across the system. I lead a lot of our strategic partnerships, where I bring big tech companies, hospital associations, and others to the table to partner with us as a system, and not just piecemeal college by college. And then I also support our AI work, and thinking about how we can use AI to really drive education across the system, and particularly how we can use AI in the classroom to help faculty be able to expedite some of that workload around creation of lesson plans and curriculum and assessment, so that they can then turn their attention to more personalized curricular efforts to really support their students in those individualized needs that they may need or interests that they may have. So the Vision 2030 demonstration project is designed to uplift the best practices that are happening across the state. And so recognizing the great work that Kathleen and others across the state have been leading in the ECE education sector, as a model for how we can scale and solve, how we can scale this project and then solve some of our education workforce, and bring the kinds of resources and support that are necessary, both financial, policy resources. If there needs to change policy, we want to know what those policy changes are that are necessary, so we can drive those as a community college system, and in partnership with our K-12s. And then, of course, we want to partner with our industry leaders and our community organizations. Good to see Kingmakers at the table, in the panel. How do we bringing these partnerships to the table to really align the education with both the outcomes goals that we have, but also with the workforce needs to ensure that our learners are able to secure high wage, high demand jobs and occupations in emerging fields and not in fields that are declining. Next slide, please. And of course, this is, just kind of a nod to all the work that you all are doing. How are we continuing to address these generational challenges that are being faced in education, right? Each generation has its own unique challenges, right? So each generation is confronted by societal changes, technology. AI is a huge one right now, future of learning, emerging technologies. How do we make sure that every learner in K-12 in the state of California is getting access to AI literacy, really understands the impact of AI on them and their families and their communities, and be able to have some ownership over how they use AI versus just having AI used on them, so that, again, we can drive those educational career pathways. Imposter syndrome is persistent, right? I've had it. I still have it at times. How do we get to a space where we give our young people the confidence and the wherewithal, right, to show up in spaces and have agency in those spaces, right? My daughter, very privileged, went to a great high school, but it was a really high performing high school. So she wasn't a high performer in a high performing high school. So she was suffering from that, right? Even though she was a high performing student. So it's crazy how the things are, she's like, I don't think I'm eligible to apply for that school. I don't think I'm good enough to go to that college. Even my daughter is having that situation, who's had a great support system and, all the kinds of things that's necessary for her success. So, and then lastly, what are the coping strategies and support that we need to continue to provide? Build systems of support, build mentorship programs. How do we use AI and future learning technologies to really scale those mentorship programs so that they're 24/7, and it doesn't drain those staff that are out there in our partnership organizations and agencies in terms of their capacity to really show up every day at 100%. And carry that weight of all their students and the challenges that they're going through. So that's all I have to say at this point, Kathleen. Thank you for inviting me to join the panel, and be around later if there's questions.
Great, thank you, Don. Thank you for being here, and thank you for representing the California Community College Chancellor's Office. It's important to have that representation at our conference. I'm sure all of our students appreciate the presence.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to now introduce Rebecca Cheung. Rebecca can tell us more about what she does at UC Berkeley. Rebecca, and I will be starting your first slide, and welcome to Teach for the Bay.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you to the organizers and the steering committee for this invitation to join you this morning. There's no more important topic in education than how we're going to uplift our leaders and empower and teachers, because our teachers are our leaders. And I say that because I am the Assistant Dean of Leadership Development Programs at UC Berkeley in the School of Education. And as a leader of leadership programs, I know how important teachers are. And in fact, that's what we talk about with our leaders. First and foremost, it's about knowing what's going on in the classroom, what's going on in our school systems, and really thinking first about students, which means thinking second about teachers, and then third about all the other adults in the space. So thank you for this organization and for this invitation. I'll follow Don's inspiration and just share a little bit about myself and my educational journey before I go into our work. And just share that if you're a person who didn't know what you wanted to be when you were growing up, that was me. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew what my parents wanted me to do, which was to get good grades and go to school and do my job, which was to go to school. And I really didn't get inspired about a career until much later in my life, when I was already in college and just kind of wandering around trying to figure out what I would be interested in. I knew what everybody else wanted me to do, but I didn't know what I had a passion for. And I found my passion in college because by taking education classes, I realized how much power schools and teachers and educators had over my what I would say was not great experience as a K-12 student. I was an English learner. I went to school. I didn't speak any English. My parents were immigrants. The teachers told my parents not to speak to us in our native language, to speak to us in English. There were many things that happened in my early life that then impacted, my whole trajectory as a student, my own self-image, my own ideas about what was good in the world. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as Asian American studies, for example, until I was in college. I mean, it was just like erased from my childhood. And so I realized that I wanted to be a part of that transformation. I wanted to transform education for other students, so that they wouldn't have the same kind of subtractive schooling experience I had. So that's how I became an educator. And it's the same passion that has driven me, all of this time. I was just reflecting this morning that I started as a teacher in Oakland in 1995. And I worked in a year-round school because they were overcrowded back then. We had different problems. I taught in roving classrooms. I didn't even have my own classroom. And that year was a 6-week teacher strike. What a first year of teaching. And so, sometimes I wonder, how did I get through that first year of teaching? And then I think, no, I know exactly how I got through that first year of teaching, which is my second piece of advice for you. I got through it because of my colleagues, and I got through it because of my mentors. I had all of these informal mentors in the educator community. Weren't even looking for them. They found me. That was the amazing part. And they would say, it's going to be okay, or I'm going to lesson plan with you, or we're going to get through this strike. I mean, I didn't even really understand what was happening at the time. And so I want to say that one of the big things I learned in that time was we need to get rid of this idea about superheroes. There's no way that education can be solved through one individual or one person. This is a community effort. It's a collective effort, and it's going to take generations, much like the civil rights movement. And so we have to think that way. We have to think about our part, and we have to think about what we are building for the next generation as well. And so I hope that you feel that some of us have contributed to where you're going to start. We're building something, a platform, trying to raise it up as high as we can for the next generation of teachers, who will then in turn raise it up for the next generation after them. So a little bit about what I do at Berkeley, which, by the way, was also an accident. I had no idea I would ever work at an institute of higher education. And so, but here I am. And I work in what's called the leadership programs. And we do lots of things, as you can tell by this rainbow. If you look on the very inside part, we have the Principal Leadership Institute, which prepares teacher leaders who want to become principals. Now, I think we need a lot of teacher leaders, and they don't all need to become principals. Let me start right there. And we do need some of them to become principals, because we need principals who love teaching and who love instruction. And then we also support leaders in their early career. And we also train through our doctorate program many people who want to work at the system level. In addition to those roles on the right, on the left, we have some roles with the state through the California Department of Education. We are the state center for 21 CSLA, which is the California School Leadership Academy. Some of you may not be aware that California made an investment in leaders finally after 25 years of not systematically investing in leaders. They finally did through CSLA, 21 CSLA. And so we're able to provide free professional learning to educators that focuses on equity leadership and also focuses on continuous improvement, because we all need to be learners. Even when we're leaders and we're teachers, we know things, yes, and there's a lot of things we don't know. As Don was talking about, we need to understand AI. We need to understand what it can do and what it can't do. For those of you who are multilingual, remember, AI is not smart enough to speak in more than one language. I often tell my kids this at home. AI is not bilingual. AI is not trilingual. AI cannot think in more than one language at a time. And so these are the places where we have to really be ready, and we have to learn the tools, but we also have to be aware of some of the misperceptions that can be out there in the world. So that's our work in the leadership programs. Now, if you could go to the next slide, one of the things we do is research, because that's what research universities do. I want to share with you that people are thinking about this even from the research perspective. How do you sustain and how do you stay in the work? We've been doing a study called the Resilient Leader Study for the last 4 years. It started during the shutdown. I don't know, we were just crazy. We decided that principals had time to respond to a survey in the middle of the shutdown about resilience. But in fact, that was the moment when we needed to be talking about it. What we learned in this time was over this time is that there are particular stressors at the individual level, but also at the different levels of the system that impact leaders. And I suspect they also impact teachers. Similarly, there's also things that provide connectedness and support and therefore resilience. So when you're thinking about sustainability in the long haul, don't just plan for the stress because yes, it's a stressful job. We're all ambitious. That's why we're here. Yet we also have to plan for how we are going to stay resilient and stay sustained and inspired, not just present, but inspired to continue doing the work. In our study, we were fortunate enough to be able to sample a lot of leaders of color. So I want to just point out that to the point of diversity, we also need to, in the research community, we've been really pushing researchers to identify specifically what are the additional stressors and needs for teachers and leaders of color so that we can also meet our equity goals. So if you see that as something that's coming up and emerging more in the news, it's because we need people at all levels pushing the system. Also at the very top, whether it's through scholarship or through policy making, to also set an equity agenda. So why do we study these things? Well, because then we use that research to, if you could go to the next slide, to design professional learning. And through 21 CSLA, we're able to provide many design around many of the elements that we've identified as important to leaders' sustainability and resilience, including networking and supporting people through racial affinity groups, or supporting them to understand how to support students with IEPs, or working with multilingual learners, etc. How do you lead in those spaces? How you lead right now, for instance, to implement ethnic studies, something I really could have benefited from when I was a student in K-12 education, or UTK, which is our universal pre-kindergarten program for ECE teachers, all very important. So here in the Bay Area, we actually serve 6 counties with no cost professional learning. Last year, we served over 900 teacher leaders and side leaders and district leaders for free. And there are 6 other regional academies in the state doing this work as well. So in each part of the state, leaders are able to be served in a networked community to lead and press on in terms of equity issues. So I'll just end by the final slide to just share some of what that professional learning looks like. Because regardless if you're an early career teacher or you're just getting into the profession, you should know what good professional learning looks like, because you're going to be given a lot of choices, and you should put your time in the places that are going to support you the most. What we focus on is what we call localized professional learning, meaning what are your local pressing needs in your school or context. Look for professional learning that focuses on that. Don't go to the general stuff. Try to focus on what you need and what your school needs and your community needs. Also, we provide communities of practice. In communities of practice, role-alike groups, for example, a group of teacher leaders who are all instructional coaches, let's say in math, come together. They each have an equity problem that they want to work on as a coach, and they help each other to do that. So think about all the crowdsourcing and support that comes from that kind of networked learning space. And I know there's lots of those for teachers as well. And then finally, we're providing 25 hours of leadership coaching, which is individualized at no cost to teacher leaders, site leaders, and district leaders. And that leadership coaching is based on what the leader wants to work on. What are your growth areas? What are the areas where you want to go deeper as an equity leader? And let's set some goals for how you're going to get there. So when you're looking for professional learning, think about what you need at the individual level, what kind of community you want to develop and the networks you want to be a part of, and also think about your local school context. And hopefully that will help you find the communities that will keep you invigorated and learning, much as it has for me. Thanks again for having me.
Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca. Great information. Hopefully we'll have some questions in the chat and comments. Thank you. Thank you both. We're going to move to Dixie Carranza from San Francisco Unified School District, who's going to drill down to the kind of micro level of working for a district and at specific schools around keeping teachers engaged. And I don't see her.
Thank you.
There you are. Okay.
Here we go.
Dixie, I'm going to move to your next slide and just tell me when you want the slides advanced. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the invite to come and speak with everyone. As I listen to everybody, I realize this moment's kind of like coming full circle. I'm a first generation college student for my family, and my journey through college and to this point here is kind of like almost like accident, like kind of that lost student, like kind of like what Rebecca mentioned. I did not know what I was going to do. I did everything like that my parents and family wanted me to do, as far as, you know, take care of my responsibilities, but I didn't really understand the steps that required. Other than the graduation part. Like every time I got to graduation, I felt like I accomplished something, but I didn't realize that I should have been planning already and that I was already behind. So I was exposed to children at an early age with my grandmother's in-home daycare. And that was something that early on I knew it felt like a strength for me, something that it seemed natural, and definitely opened my eyes to the possibility of children being in my career, as part of my career. And while I ended up in the San Francisco Unified School District in high school, I was in kindergarten, SFUSD, and also in high school. I went to Catholic school in between, but in high school, I was a little overwhelmed just because the school was so different. But what I realized is that my friends are the ones that got me here, like following my friends and going to those invitations to go meet with a counselor by accident. She said, come talk to a UC Davis counselor with me. And literally that is really, she looked at my transcripts, made me feel like if I applied, I would have a chance. And of course, when asked about what I was interested in, all I could talk about, the only thing I did know I was good at was working with children. And so I was a human development major. And again, got to graduation without thinking about the next steps and not knowing what I was going to do, and was already working in the daycare setting in the area, and decided and was able to move on into director role at a daycare in Dixon eventually. And that experience working with migrant families was mind-blowing, just because I did not realize the need of our communities. I was in my own little privileged bubble, even as coming from immigrant families. We had a lot of resources that I realized that others didn't have. College really opened my eyes to the blessings that I was privileged to have, just even my own family being so supportive. And that many people that I met in college didn't necessarily have that. And to me, that was home base. That was my everything. And so, of course, when I went to college, I thought I was going to be a doctor, because that's all that our immigrant parents know, like that's what they want for their children, be a doctor. So of course I was going to be a pediatrician, until I realized that I didn't like those classes. And I felt way more connected to the psychology courses that felt more like the right place for me. And so I really enjoyed my human development major, and that guidance I did get from just speaking to that one counselor over in my high school that one day. She's the one who kind of just suggested that that would be the best match regardless of what career I wanted. And she was absolutely right. And it took me many years from there. In working in Dixon, I loved working with the families, but I also saw the lack of equitable practices that was going on. Even with a Latinx supervisor, I was really happy to work under her, but I saw different things where I felt like there should have been a voice for our community, for more equitable, the more equitable spreading of the money. I felt that was a private company that just wasn't spreading the money to all the neighborhoods as they should, and that broke my heart. But moving on, I ended up coming back home for family purposes and worked in the Oakland school districts. And this time I worked in high schools, which was also something surprising to me. I didn't know that I could work with older students. I thought I was just good at the younger kids. But really, what a great experience. Again, I think everything I stumbled across in my journey was on purpose, because it really has made a perfect match for me and my skills, or my strengths. And so moving on, again, I lacked confidence. I think that was just a part of not really ever having conversations with anyone who really saw me, other than maybe my supervisor, who just saw that I was really good at working with families. And that's how I ended up being a director of the program for a bit. But once I moved on to Oakland, it's just more expensive here living back home in the Bay Area, and I just couldn't stick with the pay at the time, and I just didn't have the confidence to say I could go back to school. I had that was holding me back. Definitely the lack of confidence and lack of basically making those networking with people who could guide me through this process. So I left education for a while, for about 14 years, and I was dealing with personal life things, which I think I was supposed to take care of that too. But in the end, I was yearning to work with children still. I was missing in my life. And one day I finally just stayed late at work and applied to go to grad school. And here I am, also with the guidance of a friend and encouragement. And the first day in class, I knew I was in the right place again. I was with the right people, learning about the things that I felt were important. And now that I'm here and I'm blessed to have this job in the San Francisco School District, I'm able to work on these projects like the Mission Educator project, where I am able to really connect with the young people and be guided by the student voice. I am a counselor for the College and Career Readiness Department, and I work at different schools. I primarily work at the high school for our young teen moms, many are underdocumented and require the extra resources and the extra time just to kind of connect with them and understand their specific needs. I am also working out of Mission High, where I am today, right across the street from Mission Dolores Park. I feel like I'm very blessed to be in connection with these students who need these kind of programs where they can be seen, or where they could just learn to use their strengths in a positive space. And so our students I supervise are able to, the high schoolers that I work with primarily are able to jump into working with young children in our elementary, middle, and preschools. And maybe we can move on to the next slide.
And give about 2 minutes.
Thank you. So the Latinx high school graduates attend college at a significantly lower rate. And so part of what we were trying to do is just get the students to see themselves in their teachers, in their classrooms. And so our high schoolers we were able to see this need that many of our students spoke about, this lack of connection with school, lack of connection to their teachers, or people just not understanding them or understanding their family situations. And so before we started this program, we did interview many of our Latinx SFUSD staff members to find out their journeys and what was lacking. And we used a lot of their stories were common and just needing someone to guide them, needing someone to see them in the district so that we can increase the number of teachers of color in the district. Can we move on to the next slide, Kathleen, please? Thank you. And so this is a little quick video of our what. This is what we're doing with the high schoolers right now, just to give you a little glimpse.
The sound is not,
Okay, well, let me tell you about it then. Sorry, I don't know how to.
Yeah, we can, that happened yesterday too. I think it might be the new Zoom
Cruz is
update.
reading a book about the world to a
Okay,
group
now it's
of
working.
Latino children. She's participating in a new pilot program that pairs high school students like her with young kids in the predominantly Hispanic Mission District.
Spanish was my first language, so I speak both, but I feel more comfortable speaking Spanish with them because they mostly speak more Spanish.
Dixie Carranza leads the Mission Education Program.
The beauty of it is that the high school students are supporting younger students, and we want the students to see themselves in their teachers.
You see the food in the stores and restaurants, you see the food on TV.
Mary Paris is getting paid as an intern. As part of the program, she has to take a class at City College on the Latin American diaspora. The goal is for her to eventually pick a career in education.
I feel like we do need more Latino teachers because I feel like in the district we don't have many. So I feel like it's very much needed.
And that's true even here at San Francisco Unified, where less than 25% of teachers working in the district are Hispanic. Both Cruz and Perez are learning the skills needed to earn the respect of the students, even those who see themselves as a little older and wiser.
They're a little extra hard, because they're going through that time where they're going to middle school and stuff. But they're cool, they're chill, they're very respectful.
In San Francisco, Leanne Melendez, ABC 7 News.
Thank you, Kathleen. And so on the next slide, yes, there's a lot, I know. But basically I get to the beauty of I get to meet these students and see what this experience does to them, how it picks them up, how it supports their mental health needs, how some of our underdocumented students have never had a work experience in a positive space. They tell me, oh, I've never had someone be nice to me and actually care and ask me how I'm doing. She's like, I'm thinking of one student in particular that she couldn't even get out of bed to go to graduate, but this internship, which she was already a part of, I was able to advocate for her, and she was able to graduate, find a community within that job experience, learn about the skills she had naturally. She was a natural educator, a natural just caregiver in general. And so I feel like if I had a program like this when I was in high school, I would have thrived and I would have learned or got to my final steps or, just grown differently. But I mean, I don't regret anything. I know that everything happens for a reason, but I feel like I'm blessed for this unique experience in this role where I can hear from the students firsthand, their needs, their experiences. I'm learning about anything that comes up for them, that their obstacles they're dealing with, and just the network I'm able to do in this position with people in the district that are supporting the same students. I feel like is what it's inspiring, and I know it's a lot of work, but knowing that many of us are doing taking the time to be empathetic and engage and just connect and be a resource for our students is what's really valuable in this role right now for me. And I wish that for anybody who has that passion.
Thank you so much, Dixie. I think our speakers thus far have really spoken to the need for everyone on this plenary session call to become teachers, to represent the students like you in the classrooms. very inspirational. And I'd like to now introduce K.O. Wilson from Kingmakers of Oakland, and he's going to tell you about his current work and a bit about his journey. And K.O., I'll start with your first slide. Thank you so much.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for having me. First and foremost, just keep it consistent with everyone else. Greetings, everyone. My name is Kenderick O'Brien Wilson. I go by KO, just a family nickname, and my initials as well. If I talk with a twang, I am born and raised from Birmingham, Alabama. So certain things do have a habit of, it'll come up sometimes. I graduated from Birmingham Southern College with a BS in economics and math, and I moved from Birmingham to Seattle, Washington to pursue a finance career. Did not like the finance game too much, so I really want to go back to like what I was taught a lot in my community. My grandmother was a teacher when Alabama had segregated schools. She was a history teacher there, and she had a lot of proximity to whiteness. She was very light-faring, and she was one of the few Black teachers that got integrated into the main schools in Alabama after the Brown versus Board of Education decision. I just remember hearing my grandmother talk about just the love and just the rewarding of being in education. So I made a career switch, and I really wanted to get support, particularly like students of color, and to get in the pathways of becoming a teacher. So fast forwarding it to where I am now, created a program in Seattle Public Schools in conjunction with the community college system in Washington State to create a pathway for paraeducators and alumni teacher academies to go through to validate their lived experiences, to get through the AA process faster, then get to a BA program and move forward to a teacher certification. Because right now, the way it seems in California, it takes 6 to 7 years to get your certification. And if you're a paraeducator at 35 years old, that might not be feasible with your lifestyle in terms of like having a family and like you're working and all that stuff. So I just want to ground it like that, like why I transitioned to where I am, to come to like healing. Because when I heard my grandmother talk about some of the stories that she told me of when she integrated, they put her office in a janitor room. Think about the trauma that's involved in that. And she went through that trauma without anyone talking to her how to unwind that. So that's just at a grown adult level. Think about the students that were integrated that no one had that type of, patience to talk about it. Like I heard it from Brother Dunn when he was talking about his daughter, where like, hey, like she was second guessing about where to apply from. Wow, I heard with Sister Rebecca when it comes to like, someone told me they had to speak a different, I can't speak my native language, I got to speak this. These are singular isolated events that have not dealt with. People can hold that throughout their whole life. So what we came up with a framework, not to put the blame on the student, but like really to focus on us, the people who are actually working with candidates to become into the teacher pathways, of a healing framework. And next slide, please. This framework considers the experiences, the collective and individual trauma, and most importantly, the individual strengths of each student brings to the program. Some folks thinks that being multilingual is a deficit. I think that is amazing. Matter of fact, America is probably the only country in the world that we only speak one language, and you might get some Spanish on the side. But if you go to like continents like areas like South Africa or Namibia, they speak German, Portuguese, Bantu languages. They speak all these other languages, and they're prideful of it, and we speak one. The frame is understanding and acknowledging that each student brings their lived and academic experience to the classroom. It's an old saying, like, you can't teach with who you don't know. So this framework is just really trying to center, like, we have to get to know the folks that we're recruiting in terms of a teacher preparation program. And that starts with the person who is doing the recruiting. That starts with the instructors that are teaching these folks once they get into the program. The work is validating student experiences through their education, therefore creating for spaces to recognize and utilize their strengths, leading to a healing academic experience. Right now, I currently work for Kingmakers of Oakland. I'm the director of Black male teacher recruitment, retention, and certification. I work closely with Sister Tracy, Burt, also Brother Bobby Pope at SFUSD, and DeAndre Ball. We have created a pathway for paraeducators that who choose to want to get their teacher certification, we put them through an apprenticeship program to make sure they're on their way to certification. But what I just spoke of though, I think the apprenticeship model is amazing, but we do need another model that validates the experience of like the paraeducators who are like 35 years old, who have been there for 10 years. They should not be starting at the same level as someone who have not worked with students. So right now, I feel like, there's a huge pool right now in California that we're not tapping into. And if we could just validate the lived and work experience of these paraeducators, I think we can really build a system that it works for everyone in the ecosystem. Yep, credit for prior learning, exactly. Thank you, brother. Yep. Next slide, please. And I'm sorry if I'm rushing through this. I just want to make sure that folks get time for questions. So I got my email on there, so please, you can respond. But why the Healing Center approach? Again, we do not want to blame the student. As Sister Rebecca showed when she showed the Brofenbrenner ecological landscape slide, we don't want to start with the individual. We want to start with, I think, the chrono system and the macro system. We want to, what are the factors that are in place that are making folks resistant of going into these teacher preparation programs? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So what we're trying to do is let's start with healing. What do we need to do as a system? Again, aligned to what Sister Rebecca said, to heal. So then when these individuals come into the system, we can train them, we can place them, and we can retain them once they get into their placement at the respective school district. So academic trauma comes from impact of adverse, just a singular event. Like I recall my math experience. I was in AP math, and from K through 8, I went to a predominantly all Black school, and I saw all Black teachers. That was just the nature of being in Birmingham, Alabama. When I got to the private school, because I was recruited to play football at a private school, John Carroll Catholic, that's when I had folks question who I was, question who my identity, question my intellect. And I didn't realize it, but I was holding a lot of trauma by that. So I'm like, how can I heal so I don't project that to others? And once I start healing, that's when I start moving forward to getting others into the field. So the programs that I led in Seattle Public Schools, Portland Public Schools, two of the whitest cities in America. Since 2019, we have had 126 Black men enter these programs at both of them, combined. By validating lived experiences and talking about healing, but not putting the blame on them, but seeing what we can do from a system standpoint to really create this community of care, this community of love to get things moving forward. Next slide, please. I think that's it for me. Yep, because I didn't want to take up too much of time, but the premise of it is just really thinking about, I'm going to stay in tune with what the quote is, meeting the moment and sustaining for the long haul. By doing that, you have to heal. It might not come overnight, but we have to be able to look our own selves in the mirror, the 4 pivots, to see what can we do to, heal ourselves, so then we could be there for others to be on the pathway in the journey. Thank you. I got my email in the chat. Please, please, please let me know if you have any questions. I'll be here to answer. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you so much. I'm going to, let's see, move to the next slide. I think Tracy probably put the evaluation in the chat. I'm going to come off sharing so we can see each other's faces. And I want to tell this panel, first of all, that I don't think anyone left this plenary session. I think people are engaged, inspired. I most certainly am. Almost brought to tears a few times. And thank you so much, all 4 of you, for your commitment, your words of wisdom to our students and our participants, and for being there, for being a resource. I am going to stop sharing. And we probably don't have too much time for questions, but Tracy, were there any questions? I couldn't see the chat when I was doing any.
I didn't see any questions in the chat, but
just lots of affirmations, actually.
Yeah, affirmations.
Affirmations and thanks. We do have This PowerPoint will be, and the web recording will be on the Teach for the Bay website. And we do have everyone's email addresses on our on this PowerPoint, so you can reach out to folks. And any last comments from anyone? We've got 2 minutes. And KO, I do hear that Southern twang, and it's wonderful. Don't lose it. Panelists, any last comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, KO, my grandmother and grandfathers taught in East Texas. So I spent my elementary years in Beaumont, and was bused across town in 5th grade to an all-white school. There was one bus load of us. They dropped half of us off at one school, half of us off at the other school, and it was the first time I got called the N-word. I was a hall monitor, 3rd grader, called me the N-word when I asked for her pass. But I would tell you, my grandparents taught me to be resilient. And, there are a handful of Black teachers in that school as well. And just recognizing that these are the things that may happen and you move on. And I said, well, that's great that's who you think I am, but you still need to go to the principal's office because you don't have a pass. And so we're going to move on. Right. So how do we teach our young people to have that level of resilience?
Exactly.
Right. And as opposed to being reactive in those spaces, because we know that's coming at us. So
well, they have role models like all of you on this panel. So thank you so much. We have Angela. We have a hands up from Angela. Angela,
hi. I was trying to get my video to work, but I don't think I could make it work. But I just wanted to say I was loving that you ended KO with the word love, because I really think we talk a lot about the academics and everything that need to go into making sure that, the instruction, right? Like this idea that the instruction is very important and catering the instruction. But I hate that we get bogged down in the actual technicals of that, right? Like, I think just as hard as we want to make everything fair and push for STEM and have academia meet people where they're at, we really do need a place for healing. And that doesn't happen in paperwork, that happens in the heart. And I think education fields would be, I don't know, just I see this, in private schools. I'm from a democratic educational system, so there's a lot of heart and not much paperwork often, directed by the student more so. So we know that kids can learn very quickly, but healing the heart is definitely, should be the prominent thing, because everything else follows. So
thank you, Angela.
All right, peace.
I think ending this presentation with the word love does make sense. This is Teach for the Bay, and we're here because we love this profession, all of us. You've heard from these panelists. This is a lot of passion here, a lot of commitment, a lot of life history. And we're sending that to all of you who are out there today, sending you our love. So I don't think we have time for any other questions. We've got